I'm Steve Ember.
And I'm Barbara Klein with Explorations in VOA Special English. Today, we complete our story about the influential English writer William Shakespeare. He wrote plays and poems during the late 15th and early 16th centuries. They remain very popular today. Last week, we talked about Shakespeare's history, his plays, and his poems. Today, we talk about the events and cultural influences that affected Shakespeare and his art. We also discuss the countless ways his works have influenced language and popular culture. Many of Shakespeare's works were influenced by earlier writings. During this time, students would probably have learned several ancient Roman and Greek plays. It was not unusual for writers to produce more current versions of these works. For example, in his play The Comedy of Errors, Shakespeare borrows certain structural details from the ancient Roman playwright Plautus.
For his tragic play Macbeth, Shakespeare most likely used a work on Scottish history by Raphael Holinshead for information. It is also no accident that this play about a Scottish king was written a few years after James I became King of England in 1603. This new ruler was from Scotland, and London was alive with Scottish culture. Shakespeare may have borrowed from other writers, but the intensity of his imagination and language made the plays his own.
Shakespeare was also influenced by the world around him. He describes the sights and sounds of London in his plays. His works include observations about current political struggles, the fear of diseases, and the popular language of the city's tradesmen and other professionals. Shakespeare's knowledge of the English countryside is also clear. His works include descriptions of deep forests, local flowers, and the ancient popular traditions of rural people.
Shakespeare became a well-known writer during a golden age of theater. His years of hard work paid off. Over the years, he invested income from his acting company by purchasing land and other property. He retired to the countryside a wealthy man. William Shakespeare died in his hometown of Stratford-upon-Avon in 1616 at the age of 52. While many plays by other writers of his time have been forgotten, Shakespeare and his art live on.
It would be impossible to list all of the ways in which Shakespeare's works have influenced world culture. But we can give a few important examples. The first example would have to include his great effect on the English language. During his time, the English language was changing. Many new words from other languages were being added.
Shakespeare used his sharp mind and poetic inventiveness to create hundreds of new words and rework old ones. For example, he created the verb to torture and the noun forms of critic, mountaineer, and eyeball. Many common expressions in English come from his plays. These include Pomp and Circumstance from Othello, Full Circle from King Lear, and One Fell Swoop from Macbeth. The Folger Shakespeare Library in Washington, D.C. is the home of the largest collection of Shakespearean materials in the world. For example, it contains 79 copies of the first printed collection of Shakespeare's plays. The first folio was published in 1623, after his death. It contained 36 of his plays. Without this important publication, 18 of Shakespeare's plays would have been lost. The Folger also has more than 200 examples of Shakespeare's quartos. These earlier publications of the plays were smaller and less costly to print. You might be wondering which versions of Shakespeare's plays are read today. Scholars who work on publishing many of the plays make careful choices about whether to use words from the first folio or the quartos. The Folger Library also holds exhibits about the Renaissance period and Shakespearean culture.
The list of cultural creations influenced by Shakespeare is almost endless. From paintings to television to music and dance, Shakespeare is well represented. Shakespeare's plays have been translated into every major language in the world. All across the United States, the plays are performed in schools, theaters, and festivals. There are over 100 Shakespeare festivals and many permanent theaters that perform his works. In Washington, D.C. alone, 2 theaters perform the plays of Shakespeare and other writers of his time. We leave you with words of praise by Ben Jonson, a playwright who lived during Shakespeare's time. Mr. Jonson knew long ago that the works of Shakespeare would hold their magic through the ages.
Triumph, my Britain, thou hast one to show, to whom all scenes of Europe homage owe. He was not of an age, but for all time,